Stop for us in terms of time. Do you want to run till 9 o'clock, or do you want to finish slightly earlier? Or...
No, 9 o'clock's fine.
Yeah. Go. All right. We'll target 9 o'clock and then try not to run past for you. I know you've got friends over.
Is it your dad's birthday?
No, that's on the 25th.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
We don't want to keep you from your friends. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah. No, we appreciate you doing this for us. It's we need a maltster. So, lady and other people in the chat, because I know most of you aren't gentlemen. I'm going to count down from 3, and then we're all going to click the big red button at the same time. So, 3, 2, 1, click. Right, Chicky can sort the rest of that out. Andy, off you go. You can do the intro, mate.
Okay, welcome everyone to this episode of the podcast number 62, and we have Alison Milne from Crafty Maltsters. Welcome, Alison.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here.
Good. So, just to introduce everyone else, so we've got Chris.
Hello.
We've got Owen, and we've got Tricky as well on the podcast today. So, yeah, Alison, would you like to just go into a bit of detail how the Crafty Maltsters started? And
a bit of an introduction about you as well, because that's rather important. Andy.
Well, I am Alison Milne, as you've already said, and alongside my husband Daniel and my father-in-law Norman, we run Crafty Maltsters. But first and foremost, we are farmers, because without being farmers, Crafty Maltsters would not have happened. And both my husband and I are probably at least 6th generation farming family. Wow. That's as far back as we can trace anyway, but it probably goes further than that. So cut our veins and we're bleeding Scottish agriculture, as it were. And you asked, how did Crafty Maltsters start? And that's it. It's from the farming perspective. Both my husband and I are very passionate about the future of the industry, and being arable farmers, we do have cattle as well. But grain farming is the bread and butter of what we do. And we were looking at ways that we could make the farm viable for the future. And like most other farming families, it's often about looking after it for the next generation. What we sit on in terms of the land is just ours to look after. So Dan and I did a bit of head scratching on ways in which we could add value to what we were doing. And at the time, I was working for the National Farmers Union, and I was doing a supply chain project with Tennent's Lager. Nice. And it was all about how they could get closer to their growers, get more provenance through the supply chain. And this was probably about 10 years ago, maybe more now. And the more I started to look at it, the more I thought, there's something not that well functioning about this supply chain. You know, we've got craft brewers, craft distillers popping up everywhere, really looking for that provenance, knowing where the grain comes from. And it just wasn't really possible because we're working in this big industrial commodity supply chain. So there was a bit of a light bulb moment in thinking, you know, why isn't there more small scale maltsters? When we looked into it, it became fairly apparent why not, because the equipment to actually do it is not really there. The capital cost of putting it in is massive. But we still thought, well, okay, that we're not going to let that stop us. We're going to keep going. We're going to find out, because it seems like the right thing to do. And we were hugely passionate about the fact that the barley is the soul of brewing and distilling. It makes a difference in the supply chain, and we just wanted to explore, really. So we started looking at what was happening in the States. And the craft malting scene was really sort of starting.
Kick off there as well,
Yeah, it was. And I think at that time there was probably maybe 10, 15 small scale maltings. And I guess we just felt, well, if they can do it there, why on earth are we not doing it here?
So cool.
You know, we've got such a fantastic brewing and distilling industry in Scotland and indeed in the rest of the UK. So there's definitely something in that. Do you want me to pause? Have you got any questions that you want to ask me about?
No, keep going, Alison. This is all good. Yeah,
it's cracking.
Keep going.
So yeah, we got in touch with Harriet Watt because although we had all that generational knowledge of growing barley, we had zero idea how to malt. So we got in touch with somebody at Harriet Watt, went through, started to understand a little bit better what the malting process entailed. We looked at some of our bigger maltsters in the UK, trying to kind of get a handle on where the industry was. And the more we did that, the more enthusiasm we had that this was something that really needed to be explored. So we started looking into the equipment, and we very early on we realized that if we were going to deliver a quality, consistent product, then we were going to have to make quite a substantial investment in the equipment, because you have to have that level of control in what you're doing. And we came across a company in Germany called Kasper Schultz. Got in touch with them. Very, very, very hefty price tag, which kind of made us go,
how are we going to do this?
How are we going to do this? And we looked at what systems the American craft maltsters had. Some of them had kind of, I don't want to say makeshift, but they'd kind of put together different pieces of kit. And we thought, I'm not really sure that's going to cut it here. The Chinese had started making some systems. We also spoke to quite a few engineering companies based in Scotland to say, could you build us
fabricate something? Yeah.
And we spoke to a couple of people who were really enthusiastic, but they came back and said, look, the design cost of this is going to be so colossal that you're done before you start. And I mean, the steep tank, the stainless steel element of everything is not the complex or the expensive bit. It's the control, the air temperatures, the humidity, all that kind of side of it. So they really didn't want to touch it. And if they did, we were probably pushing on hundreds of thousands of pounds. And then one of them came across an Italian company called Zanin, and they were in their infancy of designing a malting system. Well, they had actually produced a 2-ton system. They were, like us, a generational business, but they were in grain handling and drying facilities. So we hopped on a plane. My father-in-law, husband, and I went across to Italy. To start with, had a very nice Prosecco-fueled lunch with this Italian company. Very good sales pitch. And yeah, pretty much. We still get a box of Prosecco every year from them, which
outstanding. Just what you want, that.
Nice. So yeah, we saw the system in action, and we thought, this can work for us. Still coming with a very hefty price tag, but not quite as bad as the German system. And we actually managed to get some grant funding from Scottish Government, because everything that we were trying to push in terms of, the farmer actually being in control of the supply chain, the provenance we wanted to bring. And I guess one of the biggest things was, from the outset, we were pretty clear that this was also about research and development. It was about saying, we really want to prove the importance of the barley here. Let it speak for itself. Let it come through in the final product. And we knew that to do that, we didn't have the cash to be able to invest in research and development. So we forged links with the James Hutton Institute, which is the crop institute up here. And we went to them and said, look, we really just want to showcase the barley and the role of the farmer in this process. And they were delighted
of course,
to help us. So it was a pretty compelling story from a funding point of view. And we were lucky enough to get some funding from Scottish Government.
Amazing.
Yeah. And at that point...
What year was this?
So that was 2018 when we got the approval.
Yeah. This is all recent,
So that's when we got the approval for the funding, and then the real funds started. So we pretty much kind of just said, right, we're going to take this leap. And was there a bit of naivety involved in it? Possibly.
Jeez.
Was that a good thing? Definitely.
Yeah.
Because
a lot of stress.
Oh, massive. I mean, we had to put up a new shed. Originally, we're going to put it in some of our old farm buildings, but to retrofit, to try and get everything in, the services, all the rest of it, it's just going to be a nightmare.
So did you have to then go through planning for the new shed?
Yeah, so we would have qualified for prior approval because it was an agricultural building, but we decided to add an extra bay on midway through, which meant then we actually did need to apply for planning. So that was, anybody that's been through that process, I'm sure, will kind of understand the pain that entails. But yeah, we did. And then I think it was the tail end. So the building went up 2018, and the equipment started to come across in end of 2018, beginning of 2019. It came across on 2 Arctic lorries from Italy in pieces, and we kind of interpreted the commissioning from the Italian point of view as actually being here to help us put the system together, but actually that's not really what it meant. So it was not dissimilar to IKEA furniture.
Wow.
And it was very, very stressful. I mean, to start with, the kind of big bit of kit, the germination drum, was, I think, 6 tons. So our forklift couldn't cope with it. So we had to phone the local crane company to come and crane it off. And of course, that would only go so far into the shed with the crane.
Yeah.
So we then had to try and maneuver. And I mean, my father-in-law particularly, not a qualified engineer, but the skill that he has, from a farming perspective built up. If we hadn't had that, and my husband definitely has those skills, but I don't think he'll mind me saying not quite to the same extent as his dad. But the pair of them, I mean, the pair of them and what they did in putting the equipment together was pretty awe-inspiring, I would say. And I think sitting back now and looking at it when you've gone through the pain is, the system inside out, every nut,
you know
every
how to fix it, because you built
it. So that's only with hindsight that you can say that it was a good lesson to learn.
It sounds very much like you've gone down the route of trial by fire. Is probably the best description for that one. I mean, aside from the crate of Prosecco, everything else has literally been, just pulling on a pair of gloves and getting after it, really. That's and to be fair, I've used your Pops Pale quite a few times in beers, and I don't want to say that you can taste that it's artisanal, but there's certainly a different flavour than what you get from most of the other malts.
It's got
especially the bigger, more main. No, that's wrong word. The more well-known malts. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's got a nice sweetness to it, doesn't it, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
And the extract efficiency, like, make sure you just bump up whatever numbers you normally get in your brewhouse efficiency. Maybe add 5% or so.
I overshot by, I think it was 7 points on the brew that I was making.
Yeah.
So that was quite impressive.
Yeah, no, that's good.
That was the last one that I did. So yeah, that's actually a really good question. Actually, we have some guys actually listening in on YouTube right now. The regular crew, the special team, and Graham Hughes, who's down in he's Brighton-ish, that kind of area. He wants to know, why do you think it is that the efficiency is so good with your malts?
So we think there's a few reasons. I suppose starting from the farming perspective, it's the uniformity of the grain and the quality of the grain, and the fact that if you're working on a much bigger scale, and it's absolutely no disrespect to any other larger scale maltster, but you're going to have different grains from different farms with different levels of nitrogen, and so many factors that come into the makeup of each individual kernel, whereas we have, it is from that field, if we're doing a batch, and we grade it quite stringently, so that every grain that's going into that steep, the first stage of the malting process, is pretty much exactly the same size. Part of the reason that we can do that is if we're grading smaller grains, we feed them to our cows, so it's not waste.
Is it exclusively from your own farm then, all of the barley that you're using? So it's not even drawing in from other sort of local farms at all. It's just all in-house, totally. So you've got full control, like you say, over everything, pretty much.
Yeah, and I think there's a real value in that because you've seen it from seed. You know exactly the condition that it's grown through, whether it's had a wet spring, everything. And actually what we've learned is the malting process is so similar to what you're doing in the field. It's just you've got much more control. From a farming point of view, God knows what the weather's going to do. So you just have to work with it. Whereas actually malting, you're controlling all aspects of that. So my husband's very much the chief maltster, and we've had no training whatsoever. Everything that we've done has been from our own kind of learning process, and to him it came quite intuitively, just for that reason I was saying, is you're just replicating what you would do in the field and the way that it grows, and he just got it. And I would say, as far as the kind of higher efficiency goes, a lot of that is credit to him. He has a skill from a sensory perspective of understanding exactly what the grain is doing at each stage of the process. He's rubbing it out, he's smelling it, and we will wait. If it takes an extra day, an extra 2 days, an extra 3 days, we will not kiln at the final stage until it's absolutely as modified and perfect as it can be.
Because do you not look for the moisture content in the grain as well before you harvest it? Is that right, Alison?
Yeah, so from a farming point of view, we want the grain to be as dry as possible, because it means we don't have to dry it when it comes off the combine, which costs us money. So we get it off. If it's a bad year, it might come off at 18-19% moisture. We'll spend money drying it down, back down to whatever, 13%. So when we went to malt it, it's like totally counterintuitive, because we're going to chuck it in a big vat of water. But yeah, I mean,
it's ready to go.
We don't have any high-tech lab equipment other than our moisture meter, because it's so critical. If you don't get that right, and you can test the moisture of the grain, at the steeping process, but the critical thing is that the moisture has gone all the way through the grain rather than sitting on the outside of the husk. So it's not, it's slightly more complex and sensory. I mean, the sensory bit is a massive part of it.
So it's a bathtub rather than a shower, is what you're saying. It's got to be soaked all the way through.
Yes. Otherwise,
There we go.
you won't get the quality, and it won't grow the same way when you get to the germination stage.
Okay, so just to pick up on that and just to move forward with that one a little bit, I mean, obviously the moisture is an important thing, and your husband's a bit of a savant when it comes to it. We've got that one, and I've used his malt, so I know he's pretty good. Tell him he's not allowed to change. Right? Tell him there's no changes allowed. We're not allowed. No.
Okay.
The other thing is, what sort of scale is it that you're doing this malting on? So when you're doing, and I don't even know if I'm using the right terminology, when you're doing a batch, what sort of size batch would you be doing?
So the system is 4 tons,
Okay.
but the reality is we can't put 4 tons into it because the airflow. So we've tried it at the beginning. And you don't get the airflow through the machine. It's like stuffing your tumble dryer too full,
Yeah.
or your washing machine or whatever. So it doesn't work, which actually has quite a big impact on the business model, if you want to call it that, because we had nobody to compare ourselves to because nobody else was doing it in the UK. So we did all these projections of how much malt we would produce per annum and, all that. And actually, my husband now is probably putting about 3.2 tons in to get the quality that he wants. So it's had a big, big impact on where we thought we would be in terms of what we would sell, which has been quite tricky.
So it's about a 20% reduction to your original projections. Yeah.
But would you rather have 20% less and produce the quality that you do, or go for the 4 ton, produce loads, and it not quite be where you want it to be? That's the question, isn't it?
Well, that's the reason. Yeah. I mean, that's why we just don't, because we were, I guess, everything that we do. I mean, my husband has a real attention to detail in every aspect, from the farm to the maltings, and he wouldn't compromise on the quality.
Tell him not to.
I will. I will.
I'm very happy with what's being produced, I'll be honest with you. Andy, do you want to do question 3? Because I'm probably going to pronounce some of them wrong, and you might know them better than me. Oh, Owen, go on.
I just had one question. So I guess Alison, you pointed out that you've sort of trailblazed this Crafty Maltster business model. Have you seen anyone else follow? Are you aware of any other kind of craft maltsters popping up in the UK? And have you spoken to them or have any relationship with them?
Yeah, so there is a couple. So there's a guy in Ireland, and there was one chap down south who I don't actually think has gone ahead, because I tried to set up a little Craft Maltsters group of the 4 of us. And we had a few calls, and it was actually really good. We've probably had 5 people come to us since we started, saying that they wanted to go down this route and set up. None of them have done it. And I suspect it's not, I mean, the capital cost of doing it is so intense that a lot of people...
You've got to tell us what that capital cost is now, or at least give us a ballpark. Quarter, 500,000?
500,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not setting one up tomorrow, then I'll be honest.
That's a big barrier to entry, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is.
It's huge. And if I was being totally honest, I would say, your kind of profit and loss per annum, it doesn't stack up.
You do it for the love of it more than for the money that it makes you.
Well, I mean, obviously, I said at the beginning, we got some grant funding, so that helped. So we got 144,000 euros because it was at that point. So that clearly helped. And I think if we hadn't had the issue with we can't put as much in the system, and also the other thing that everybody told us was the malting process is 7 days. Okay. But again, if you want the quality, we'll sometimes be 10 days.
Right.
So the throughput is so much less than what we thought it would be. And also from a labor point of view, it's much more intensive than we thought it might be, particularly for a clean down of the machine. So if you saw my husband, and I do help sometimes, but apparently I'm not allowed to go in bits of it in case, because I'm not as careful as he is. So I'm okay with that because I have no desire to crawl through the little chambers that he does. But he's goggles, he's mask, he's steam cleaner, he's like, and you just simply wouldn't get anybody employed to do it, you know. So we don't employ anybody in Crafty Maltsters. It's just the two of us, and we also have a 750-acre farm, and we have one full-time.
Who was the young girl that you had on?
Ellie.
Yeah.
So she was with us for the harvest seasons, but she's no longer with us. She's gone off to another farm. So from a farm point of view, we've got one other full-time employee and my father-in-law who, he's 71. So he's trying to retire a little bit.
Yeah.
Try and get off cycling and that type of thing. So we're doing our best to not make him feel like he needs to be here.
Just need those young boys to grow up a bit faster and help it.
Yeah, I'm not going to hold my breath, but
that's what you want, though, isn't it?
So
to push this one forward, I'm very conscious of time. What sort of barley strains do you grow? And more importantly, why are you not doing some of the German strains and producing some, some Pilsner malt? Because that would be the thing I'd be ordering probably once every couple of months.
So I'll go for the last bit of the question first. So we can make Pilsner malt, and we were making lager malt, and we just didn't have the same demand for it as we had for the pale ale, and also interestingly more distillers started coming to us probably in the kind of second half of startup. I suspect they were waiting for brewers to shout about the quality before they were willing to jump and give us a try.
Yep.
So we started doing quite a bit more on the distilling front, and from a brewing point of view, people just wanted pale ale. So we couldn't really justify an entire batch of Pilsner or lager malt, although I'm getting more and more people asking for it.
Yeah, because it keeps saying sold out, and then I'm like, oh, I wonder why that is. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we could, in terms of demands, we could probably produce 10 times what we're producing just now. I'll have people phoning to say, I'd like 100 tons a year. I'm like, well, no, can't do that. And I mean, we have looked at scaling up. We did a big feasibility study looking at increasing by, I think it was about 5-fold. And it was right in the kind of COVID time, and the price of everything was just, so I think our final budget was going to be 4.6 million. And we were like, Dan and I looked at each other and went, that's not a noose around our neck that we want.
No, you don't want that.
No,
that's a lot.
It's a lot. And I mean, on paper, it did stack up because we were going to have kind of dedicated customers, like bigger kind of distilleries and things. But you've got to have a life as well.
Yep, indeed.
Absolutely. A lot more people are realizing that now.
So just on going back to the strains, Alison, I know you were doing the bear malt recently or in the last couple of years. Could you go a little bit onto that?
Yeah, of course. So at the very beginning, when we started Crafty Maltsters, as I said, we went to the James Hutton Institute. So before we were even malting, we were trialing heritage grains.
Mm-hmm.
So they very kindly gave us 7 different seed strains. We had plots, 7 different plot trials here, and I think that was 2018. And they actually came in and harvested, because you need a little plot combine, little seeder. So they came in and did all that for us. All of them grew reasonably well. We narrowed it down to 4. So we had 2 strains of bear, an Orkney bear and a Bernary, which is another Scottish Island strain. And we had 2 Scottish land races. One is called Scotch Annat and the other is Scotch Common. So kept the seed and planted it again, kept the seeds, planted it again, until we got to a point that we actually had enough to malt. So we malted each 4 of those varieties. And the first people that they went to were Dornoch Distillery, who are really adventurous and interesting in what they're doing with whiskey. And we had a lot of interest on the heritage grains. We had everybody. We had a visit from William Grant and Sons. We had Beam Suntory, a delegation of Japanese visitors who were all really keen to work. I know, and Dan and I were like, "Oh my god, like how has this happened?"
Yeah.
But we were
Sell the cows, plant more barley.
Yeah. But we were really, really clear at the start that what we were doing was, if we were going to genuinely show that the barley and the strain of barley made a difference, we were going to have to work with people that believed that that could be true as well. It wasn't a PR exercise. It wasn't like to put, oh, this is bear on the side of the bottle. It was people who were going to use a different mindset to brew and distill with it, to actually let it come through. And I guess the way we see it is to work with the barley rather than trying to force it into doing what you want it to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we were pretty selective about who we were working with, and we've supplied a lot of it to home brewers, because the enthusiasm and what we actually learn from people, you know, they'll come back and they'll tell us all about it, and they'll bring us samples, and that side of it has been brilliant, really good.
Alison, did you hear? Was it it was the craft beer channel? Won the competition for that? And they were telling, you know, it was quite funny, and they were like, "Oh, so where did you get the malt?" And then out comes a story about, you know, your malt, and they're like, "Oh, that's going to be interesting to try and get that, you know, because they were going to brew the big batch of it." So yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, they're really, really good guys. And actually, the guy who was on the channel that night, he's a fisherman, and got a fishing boat. So we agreed that we would do a swap. Like he came into the maltings, and we were going to get to go and have get an insight into his way of life too. We haven't done it yet, but it's on my bucket list. But
amazing.
Yeah, we were delighted about that, and it was interesting to see on the recipe list afterwards that all of our malts had been substituted for other people's.
Sadly.
Yeah, so they're not brewing the same thing at all, then, are they? Really?
No. Well, I was trying to get it. Were you able to offer it, or was it just?
Well, I actually had somebody from down south contact me to say I'd really love to replicate this brew. So yeah, we gave him the amounts for the pops and the beer and sent it down to him. So it's just it goes so quickly that I've never had to put it on the website. And I've got, you know, so many sort of home brewers they'll keep me a bag. So and we do, you know, we keep a supply for
Well, no, I'm putting an order for on Monday then. I mean, things that aren't on websites that are available exclusively, I'm all down for that sort of stuff.
Yep, no, send me a message. I'll get it sorted for you.
Trust
Got
me,
your
you've already
email
had
now,
emails off me
Alison.
before, Alison. I'll sort it out.
So, what is the strain that the standard pale malt is? Is it something unusual, or is it
You know?
just like because it's specific to your farm that it has particular characteristics?
Yeah, so it's Laureate, which is the most common commercial barley still at the moment. And I mean, the difference with the heritage grains is that they are much lower yielding.
Mhm.
So if we get, I don't know, 2.7 tons an acre for Laureate, for the beer, we were getting a ton.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Big difference. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you
that's
can
why
see
it's been bred
why
that way. Yeah.
you can
I
see
still
why
want a
farmers
bag of it.
don't. Okay.
Yeah, Panta. Yeah.
Actually, the extract, I mean, the extract from it is lower, but we've managed to push as much as we can out of it. So, from a malting perspective, so you would notice a difference, but it wouldn't be as much as you would think. So yeah, the Scotch Annet and the Scotch Common, they are about 1.5 tons an acre. So is it a difficult crop to grow? There's a bit of risk attached to it because they grow much taller. So they're, yeah. But you know, a kind of older gentleman that's very experienced in malting, brewing, distilling said to me, "You think you've got to treat these grains as if with like kid gloves. They're hardy plants that were around for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
You know, work with them, just use a different mindset to grow them. They're not going to be the same as commercial strains." And that is definitely true. It's also true from a processing, harvesting point of view. They're a nightmare. They're an absolute nightmare. Like, you know, they'll get stuck through the combine. They will bridge. They will. So, you know, Dan will be stop, start. Really difficult.
wow. You wouldn't have thought there was so much hassle involved with simply running a piece of machinery through a field, but apparently there is.
Can't imagine Dan being too thrilled about growing that variety. I can't say.
Let's grow more of that one. Yeah.
I'd have the temperament for it.
Why is this winning competitions? We don't want people to know.
This is the thing, though. This is homebrewing to a T. You've got a niche product that somebody's produced something amazing with. I guarantee you, there's probably 100, 150, maybe even 200 people who are going to listen, who are going to hear about this, who are going to hear about it from a mate, who are going to want a sack of that.
Yeah.
Because that's just the kind of geeks we are.
Sorry, Dan.
Enthusiasts.
No, we're all geeks.
Okay.
This is geekdom. We want it.
There's certainly been definitely a few swear words, a lot of swear words, probably a few heated exchanges between Dan and myself about, we have so many people wanting this. I don't want to grow it. But yeah, I mean, it makes it worth it when you know that you're doing something that's so unique and you can taste the that's what we set out to do. We set out to prove that what we do as farmers and what the barley does is important. And you know, in many ways, there's frustrations in that the malt doesn't, you know, the machine doesn't do what it said it was going to do. It's bloody hard work. It doesn't go through the combine. But the biggest success, I think, has been in the little ways that we've changed people's mind about, the barley. It's important.
Yeah,
definitely is.
Yeah,
definitely is.
Yeah.
So, the question for the website has 3 options, which is Pops, Lucky Lager, and Distilling Malt. When are we going to see Bear and, for Andy, Wheat available on the web shop?
Okay, so I will agree to put some heritage grains on the website. Not directly after this podcast, because I'm going to go away and have a drink. But next week. I will put
Monday?
Yeah, I'll aim for
9
Monday.
a.m.?
Yeah.
9 a.m.?
Okay.
Just so that basically the people who've been listening to this on YouTube have got a time and a date when they can click the button.
Okay. So I've got a little bit of Scotch annet. I've got a very small amount of beer, which I'll need to get Dan to tell me the weight of it. I think it's probably no more than 8 sacks, and that's it, because we didn't grow it this year, because we worked out that we would have had to have charged £2,000 a ton to make it stack up. And I'm trying to equate what that is in 25 kilogram.
That's cheaper than Bohemian Floor Malted.
So Wehrmann's Bohemian Floor Malted spot. How much is that, Chris?
It's 90 quid for 25 kilos.
You have to take a mortgage out to buy
I sold
Wow.
a kidney to get my last sack.
Yeah, Alison,
Wow.
maybe just increase the prices.
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Do it
I
after
know.
Monday.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have a Swedish gentleman called Thomas who lives like somewhere. He's like next door but one to Santa. And he says, do you have anything available for export?
Well, believe it or not, we have actually. I've exported 2 tons to Sweden,
Oh, wow.
to a distiller out there.
Thomas, you're in luck. No, I'm having a bag of that bear. That is for sure. I'm setting an alarm on my phone and everything.
What's the Alison? What's the bear? What's the kind of aroma and taste characteristics of bear? How's that different to the standard pops?
It's sweeter. So when we malt the beer, we do it to a distilling spec, which is exactly the same as lager. So it's the temperature in the kiln is 83 degrees compared to 95 for the pale. And with the pale, in any just pops pale, you get that sweetness because it's gone to a higher temperature. Beer, even though it's been kilned at a lower temperature, you still get that like slightly caramel, sweeter. People that have brewed with it have said the mouthfeel is different, gives really good head retention. It's just like nothing else.
Is it a 6-row barley?
Yeah.
So it could be really good for like bitters and that kind of
I feel persistently bitter coming along with that one. I'll be honest.
Classic ale territory.
I'll send you a few bottles when it's brewed there.
But do people not mix it with Turo like your pops and then have beer as like, I don't know, 20 or 30-40% of the malt bill?
Most people that I know of anyway have done it as the main
just
part of the mash.
Uh-huh.
So we did we actually did a charity one. One of the guys at the James Hutton who had been a huge enthusiast about what we were doing and had basically really helped us to get this whole thing off the ground in terms of the heritage side. Very sadly, passed away. So we made a special brew, which was the first one that we'd done from the beer because we promised that the first brew would be in his honor. So brewer in Dundee did it for us, and we had it at charity rugby match. And it definitely, whether it was just because it was special, but it was. Yeah, it was one of the best beers that I've had. So it was called the Smooth Brew because his nickname was Smoothie.
That's nice.
Awesome. That's what you want.
So, also, another question. We mentioned about Wehrmann floor malted Pilsner malt. Have you looked into kind of floor malting?
I saw those eyes go wide. I'm guessing that one's a no.
Just in case you want another labour-intensive process.
I wanted to. Well, actually, what I was doing is opening the door to maybe a kind of conversation about the differences and kind of maybe a little bit more about your process of melting. I assume it's not floor malting, and whether you had explored it as something or at least done some research. You probably know a lot more about it than I do. So,
we at the very beginning we did, we looked at it and pretty quickly decided that we had enough shovels in our life without adding another one, because we have cattle as well. So like we're pretty used to mucking in with just about anything, and it was a step too far. So no, you do actually now get I think pneumatic turners, but I don't think anything substitutes for the actual shovel. So no, we quickly decided not to do that. The drum gives a different I'm going to say quality, because most people will say that, most malting experts will say that a drum will just give you a difference in the process. So I think we're as close as we could possibly get to floor malting.
Yeah, because it's a smaller batch as well, isn't it?
It's just a different outcome ultimately, isn't it? A different process, therefore a different outcome. Perhaps not necessarily a difference in quality, it's just a different outcome.
Yeah, I mean, we had, because obviously we knew nothing about, we'd never malted, we had no training. So we got an expert in for the first 3 weeks to follow us through the first 2 batches. And it was really interesting. We learned a lot from him, but what became apparent was it's a very different way of malting. And this chap had come from Diageo, big malting. It's totally different. Your approach to it, it's just very different. So we kind of walked away from that thinking this is about us learning our own system, about us learning how we want to malt, because there's quite entrenched views about how you do things, the outcome of that, the barley. I always kind of liken it to Mother's Pride flour or whatever, that said everything's stripped out of it, so it's standardized. That's not what we're trying to do. And there's obviously a place for standardized products, clearly, but that it's just not what we're about. And so many people at the beginning said to us, "You are nuts. There is absolutely no way that you can compete against Crisp or Muntins or any of these people." That's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to compete. We're trying to do something totally different.
Because you're on a smaller scale, it maybe allows you to do these things where they can't.
Yeah, and neither one is better than the other. Like, we were really clear. Our job is not to go out and say that what somebody else is doing isn't right or is worse than what we're doing. It's just different. And I think that's the way we'll stay.
I have to say, having heard about having to crawl through small chutes with a steam cleaner, I agree with them. You are nuts.
Yeah.
But, aside from that, the product that you're producing, I can't fault it in any way, shape, or form. I love it.
Yeah, it's my base malt as well. Yeah, I love it.
The latest batch of Persistently Bitter was made with Pop's Pale, and it certainly has a very different flavour profile. It's very nice.
Thank you, and I will absolutely pass that on to Dan, who you can tell that I'm the one that does most of the speaking. I did say to him, "You could join me, and he's like, "No, I'll look after our guests."
Yeah. Well, we'll have to get him on next time to discuss the actual process of malting and what's entailed, and then we can rib him about why he's not growing more bear and not producing Pilsner malt.
Definitely, that's a good idea, and he's very good crack.
That sounds like a plan for me. So, last question before we let you get back to your party. Is there anything new or any new strains of barley currently on the market, or anything that you're testing that you can just let us in on that people are probably going to want to buy?
So anything you do from a farming perspective takes a long time.
We have patience.
Okay. Well, the heritage is really 4 years worth of work, actually, to get it to the point that so we have kept up our relationship with James Hutton. We've always been interested in whether or not there's a crossing potential, because there's traits of commercial barleys that are great. There's traits of the heritage that's great. What can we do there? We also went through the process of registering the seed rights for the Scotch Common and the Scotch Annet. So we own this conservation seed rights for those varieties now. And that's quite a process. Like, you have to grow them in like special conditions and prove that they are the actual heritage grains. And so that's taken quite a long time and quite a lot of effort, I suppose. So the short answer is I don't have anything to tell you about. And it's not because it's a secret. It's just because we haven't quite pinpointed what that is. We grow wheat, we grow oats. We would love, because it's not all about me, it's about us. Keep forgetting that. We would love to malt some oats. But we've just never.
Yes.
We've never been sure whether or not we would be able to make use of the full kind of 3 tons that we would get out. Whether enough people would buy it, but yeah, we'd really love to malt some oats.
I guarantee you post about some of that in certain Facebook groups, you'd sell that 3 ton in a week.
Okay.
Yeah. The oats is definitely, a lot of brewers are now using oats in their grist because of hazy pales and all that sort of stuff, and
oatmeal stouts.
Yeah.
I guarantee if Brett produces another batch of his oatmeal stout, you're going to get rid of half a ton easy there.
Okay, well, it's on the list.
It's great. I mean, this is what the malting side of things needs, is somebody who's willing to sort of push the boundaries and do different stuff and say, no, it's about the product, it's not about the amount. I think that's a great thing.
Yeah,
and I think, from a farming perspective, there's obviously thousands of us, the length and breadth of the country that are doing this. And, pretty much to a man and a woman, all are equally as enthusiastic about what they're doing, how they do it on the land. It's just, we've been pushed in a direction of that commodity marketplace, and we have no choice but to exist in that. Open it up a bit. There's just so much opportunity, so much potential, but it's it can't be done by everybody. What we're doing, it can't be. But yeah, there's so much room for flavor. It's just the flavor has been ripped out of everything, and it would be great to have a new world where we could put it back in.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
Excellent.
I think that's a really good place to end the podcast, guys, and let Alison get back to her glasses of prosecco and her guests.
I agree.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Should we just make sure that everybody knows where to go if they want to get some of your malt? So what's the website that people need to go to, Alison? We'll put a link to this in the description for this as well.
Thank you. It's Crafty Maltsters. I want to say .co.uk. I've had a mind blank there. I'm pretty sure it's .co.uk rather than
it is, yes. .co.uk.
Yeah.
We're on Instagram. I don't really do much on Twitter anymore. I think.
What about Facebook?
Yeah, we've got a Facebook page as well. And I promise that I will put up what heritage I have, which may not be a lot, on the website.
So
I'll
it's
bet
all direct sales just direct from the website at the minute.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, we're pretty flexible. Give me a phone, send me an email, send me a message on Facebook.
If you're local as well, you can go and pick it up. I was on holiday and I managed to pick up 3 sacks on passing, so
Might be problematic for me, Andy.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a drive from Bedford.
Well, we're very accommodating anytime you want to come and visit, because basically we don't really go anywhere. So people say, is it okay to pick up on a Saturday? And it's like, well, yeah. We're Saturday, Sunday, whatever, we're here.
We might have to do, Andy, when we come up to Scotland for a brewery visit, we might have to pop over and see Alison for a couple of hours.
Stock up.
Maybe even drag Alison and Dan to the brewery with us.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
There's an idea.
Yeah,
Definitely
I think that's a good
that.
one.
Yeah,
Drive home with
definitely.
a boot full of malt as well.
Well, you're very welcome anytime.
How many can you put on a train before they start complaining that you're doing freight rather than personal? Thank you very much for joining us, Alison.
Yes.
It's been
welcome.
brilliant. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank
you.
you. It's been my pleasure. Really lovely to speak to you all. And yeah, thank you very much for inviting me.
Cheers.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you.
We'll
Really
get
interesting.
Dan on next time so we can give him loads of chivies in the right direction.
Definitely.
Okay,
Brilliant.
so to our
Thank
listeners,
you.
thanks very much for listening. Thanks to our Patreons. Thanks to our sponsor, Brewcake Tap. And also thanks to Alison from the Crafty Maltsters for being such an amazing guest. Thank you very much.
You've been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Alison.
you.
Cheers.
Say bye-bye,
Cheers.
guys.
Bye.
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 Don't leave yet, Alison.
Bye.
Okay.
Right, there we go. So that's that one ended. Alison, you need to press the stop button on Audacity.
Okay.
And then Andy's going to send you an email of how to export it as a WAV file and where to upload it to.
So wait. Just do it just now. So just hit. So if you go to File on Audacity, down to Export,
Yep.
and then Export as WAV.
Okay.
Click that. It will come up. Save as. If you just put episode, what are we on? 40,
Episode 62.
62,
And then just put your
in-
name, Alison.
Yeah.
And then Tricky will know what he's editing.
And
Okay.
it should save it to your desktop. Yeah. So it was
Yep.
saving. Yep. So hit save and then just hit OK on the next one. Yep.
Yep.
Then it will be on your desktop. What I do now is if you right click the file and then just say compress episode 62. Yep. .wav.
Oh, how am I in? Like, I'm in iTunes.
Yeah, something's gone wrong.
It's because what
Did
do
you
you do
open
if you? Well, yeah, I did. Because like, how do you right click on a Mac?
Control.
I've got it set up in the settings. Right. Is there a
Oh.
way? Is it control? Yeah. See if you hold control
Yep.
and then click it.
Got it.
Yep. And then compress.
Compress.
Yeah. So I'll give you the compress file. And then what we'll do is we'll email you where to drop it. Okay.
Okay.
I'll send that to you later. All right.
Brilliant.
So at least you got it saved. That's it.
There you go. Now
Oh.
go and have a glass of Prosecco and some crudités because you've earned it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. No, thank you very much for inviting me. And yeah, I'll tell Dan he's next.
Ah,
Definitely next.
great.
Yeah.
Enjoy your evening, Alison.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Alison.
Cheers, Alison.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, I nearly
Right.
got up then.
YouTube, we're still live because we're still talking to you guys. Didn't we have a bit of a conversation earlier, boys, about how we were going to have a bit of a chat and a few beers afterwards?
Yeah.
Do you want to do a quick commercial pod and just say whatever and just give it an hour of us drinking beer, talking bollocks?
Why not?
Yeah.
Down for that trick?
Yeah, go on then.
I need to have
Okay.
a beer.
I'm going to
Why
stop
not?
this stream. There will be another stream in a few minutes, guys. So this stream's ending now. We're going to start another stream pretty soon. So grab a beer, charge your glasses, and get ready for us
Yeah,
talking
I was gonna
bollocks.
go for a whiz and grab some cans.
Yeah.
See you later, guys.